to this computer, and off we go. Friday, Zoom 4, 31st of July. Can you believe that? 2020. Amazing. Here we are. And I've been, I've got a bunch of stuff I definitely would love to share today. But then I thought, what I don't know is how long our presentations are going to take. So my figuring was, why not we do that first, and then whatever time I've got left, we'll go on from there. So being sort of logical, I guess, can we kick off with Karen on multiple intelligences and learning styles, please? The floor is yours. And you have to unmute, yes.
Yep, thank you. Hello, everybody. Okay, I've taken it basically from what our PowerPoint said. Here we go. Howard Gardner's first will define intelligence. So I've just broken it down from the Merriam-Webster. The ability to learn, understand, and apply. So Western cultures usually go for, and the measure is an IQ test. And it's generally accepted that this is inherited, and what's worse, fixed, so fixed for life. And he points out that in Eastern cultures, intelligence is hard work. So he says if you can combine the two, you've probably got the best outcome. Okay, so let's look at his multiple intelligences. The first two, linguistic intelligence, which is the ability with the spoken language and written language. And two, logical and mathematical intelligence, the ability to reason logically, recognize patterns, and think analytically. They are what is encompassed in IQ. But he says on top of that, I've got 5 more, and they are musical intelligence, the ability to perform, compose, and utilize music patterns, spatial intelligence, the ability to formulate a 3-dimensional image or an object in space, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, when you think of a dancer or an athlete, interpersonal intelligence, the ability to work with and understand other people. And he gave an example of the used car salesman. And intrapersonal intelligence, the ability to understand and hopefully work with oneself. So what's important is that you don't have just one of these, you have many of them. And it's finding out which ones help you learn. And that translates into learning styles, where we speak with Erica Warren, and we hear her. Unfortunately, she's got 12 learning styles, and I couldn't directly correlate them with which one was what, but I tried to, and I wasted a lot of time in that process, and I thought, Jim probably just wants me to tell you what hers are. So I'm just going to tell you. The visual learner, and then I've gone and thought, okay, what do we do with it? A visual learner, we provide pictures in the classroom. For the reflective and logical learner, we give them time to think material through. And I thought maybe something like a metacog at the end of class would be something to consolidate those ideas. And also developing logical thinking is something very beneficial for students who aren't that way inclined. So that could be something you could do. An auditory learner, you provide information verbally. Now I hope as teachers we have all developed that ability. The verbal learner could be very distracting in class. You have to give them an opportunity to talk things through. They have to verbalize it in order to understand it, which could be a bit distracting. The tactile learner, they are either wanting to touch and play with things, or they want to write things down and draw pictures and relate to it through that experience. The rhythmic melodic learner, and I actually have a little daughter who's like this, she likes to think in ribbons and patterns, and she responds to music. And it's very hard to deal with in the classroom because she actually is better verbal input if she's listening to music. And you can imagine that a teacher finds that impossible or very difficult. A simultaneous learner, you need to present them with a big picture. And I think as we develop our units of work, we will be able to have a big picture that hopefully is fairly obvious for the simultaneous learner to take hold of. The sequential learner, work needs to be presented in a logical order. And I presume that the way our system is structured, logical order would come naturally. An interactive learner needs to work with others, and that could be provided in group work, as can indirect experience learner, who needs to share the experience of learning in order to learn. And the direct experience learner likes to put into practice what they have been learning. And I think group work gives a chance for that. And now, while I think all of these, I think the list is a little excessive, but I couldn't work out where to trim it. I like the fact that she acknowledges that one individual is not bound to one style of learning. And we've all had teachers say, oh, she's a kinesthetic learner, she's a visual learner, she's an auditory learner. And that isn't such, it's a mixture of the things that actually help with learning. Okay, thank you.
Karen, don't switch off your mic yet. Fantastic broad
too long, sorry.
Landscape. No. A fantastic broad landscape of the topic. My impression as I'm listening to you is, wow, as teachers, we need to be aware of every student's potential in all those multifaceted locations, if you like, or attributes. And I was thinking, I just can't help myself by saying, well, in your lesson plans, as you write your lesson plans and as you write your units of work, you've really got to have that perspective in front of you, rather than necessarily the way you want to learn and think everyone else is going to learn the same way as you. And it's, personally, I find that hard, because I'm spatial, and I love pictures, and that's me, but it isn't everybody. And I guess I frustrate a lot of people, and be aware that you will, because you won't help yourself but fall into that mode. But in your lesson planning and your units of work, you've really got to stretch yourself and make sure that you've got the variety. Well, that's all assuming that the multiple intelligences and all that is to go in your school. I've come across a few contexts where people question it, and why they're questioning it, oh, they may not have the data for it, but I know I'm not the same as other people, and I know other people can't sit still. And I gave a student, I'll never forget it, in 2011, permission to sit on my window ledge, because she was a lot more comfortable there than sitting at a desk. And I'm so glad I did. Anyway, enough of me ranting and raving. Other comments or questions to Karen? Chris?
I'm just wondering, I have seen lately some criticisms of the notion of the different learning styles, saying that perhaps the neuroscientists are saying that perhaps we're not actually all that different, but it's the content that has different ways of being taught. That in fact, because part of your brain learns, there's a part of your brain that does the mathematical stuff, and so that logic mathematical thing happens in a particular way. So it's more about the material than the person. If you're teaching music, you may well be teaching music to the majority of people, and perhaps we are not as totally different as the people would have us believe.
Chris, you've spot on. I was a neuroscientist in my past life. Okay, and I wanted to bring this into this. This is why I chose number 1, because I thought, oh, number 5's interesting. I don't understand the other 3. I'll do number 1. And I wanted to bring that in, but it added another 5-10 minutes. Why at the end I said that it's good that she says them all, and we have bits of all of them, because the more you incorporate accessing all of those different learning styles, you're actually activating different parts of the brain in each of them, and the whole encompassing process is what is required for learning, according to the latest research in neuroscience. So what I would say is you take that and then incorporate all aspects into your classroom, if you can. I find some of them practically very difficult to try and see how I would incorporate them. Yeah, but it's definitely the neuroscience is heading that we need to experience all of them in order to learn deeply.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. I just feel like, can we have a show of thumbs, please? Would you prefer to be teaching a class that's graded, as in we put those with super ability in maths in one group and teach them as one group? Or would you be happier to teach the variety right across the board? Those in favor of it all in one group?
I don't know.
Those who like the widespread in the same class? I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have thought there'd be more of these. That's interesting.
I think for me, it's because like I haven't obviously been in math, but well, in the classroom I have been, they've like generally taught everyone together as one big group, and then they've sort of split everyone off. So like if they're having troubles, like they'll go help them, but the kids who can work themselves will go work by themselves. But I guess though it also kind of makes it look like, I guess when you split kids, some kids may feel like, oh, well, they're better than I am or whatever, so I'm stuck in this group that's not so great or whatever. So I guess doing it all together makes them all feel like one big class. But then
Yeah. Sorry, I can't resist to tell a quick story. I don't know about you, but I was growing up in England in the primary school in the 50s and up to 1960. So at 1962, we had the equivalent of the 11 plus, an exam at the end of primary school to determine your whole life trajectory. Do you go to a grammar school or do you go to secondary modern? And a few years earlier, you actually had to sit an exam. But in my year, it was the principal decided, you go this way or you go that way. And I thought, wow. And because I was incredibly fortunate to have a teacher as a father, I went through a circuitous route and ended up in an independent school. But I wasn't originally going to go there. But what about those who get put in a box and they shouldn't be? And then I love the whole notion of the comprehensive school, where it was put the grammar school and the secondary mod together so that you might mature, in inverted commas, at a later stage or an earlier stage, and you're not necessarily bound to be put into a group at an early stage or too earlier stage. Anyway, we digress, and we must move on. Do we have Andrew? Yes, we do have Andrew in his garage. Yeah. So give us some teaching strategies, please.
Okay. All right. Now, it's interesting because what Karen was talking about, I sort of had an intersect with what she was talking about. So that was rather interesting because I came across a guy called Joe Rule. Don't know if any of you heard of it, but he was talking exactly about all these intelligences and different styles of thinking. And he actually took the time to implement all the different learning models or learning strategies in his classroom into separate little areas. And all the kids could interact according to their style and their intelligence. But he made sure that every activity would achieve the same desired outcomes.
Wow.
So, yeah. And he said it took him a long time to develop all this, but at the end of the day, the kids got the outcomes that they needed. And it was in one single class. Looking at it, I don't think I could do it. But, if he can do it, maybe we could. So let's cover the teaching strategies. So I wonder if I can share my screen. Oh, come on. I've got a very wobbly mouse. Here we go. Which screen am I going to share? Yeah, that one. Okay, share. Can you guys see the teaching strategies that we've got here? All right, so the very first one you've got, of course, is guided discovery. Under guided discovery, the underpinning pedagogy is that the student can discover the knowledge themselves. They will in the process have created and added to their own scaffolding of understanding. So as we know, guided discovery requires a bit of guidance. So there is obviously, we teachers have to be involved, but not as the most important person. I mean, they take part in that learning process. The second one is, maybe I'll give an example of a guided discovery. I was thinking about learning a car. You know, I'll maybe start off with the basics, and you know, the student takes over, and here we go. You can try it out yourself, turn the engine on, see if you can take off. We're talking about manual cars here, and you start to bunny hop in the first place before you get your pedals into gear and you realize how you can control them. And that's an example of a guided discovery. Then you can teach them about the changing in gears. At what point do you start changing gears? And the student will actually have to try it out themselves and work out at what point they're going to do that. So the next one is developing critical thinking. Now, here's a little picture of developing critical thinking. It's at the core of most intellectual activities. So the students are involved in the learning process. I suppose at this point in time, critical thinking would still require some guidance depending on which level that student is at, which grade. You know, you will require still some guided discovery. But at the end of the day, critical thinking is about being able to join different ideas together to come to a conclusion, or to come to a, you know, to analyze and to be able to hypothesize, to reason and compare. And that's what we're teaching children to do. Now, this is, for me, this is kind of hard because I was never brought up in this area. In Asian culture, you just learned whatever was given to you, and everything was done by memory, rote. But I don't know, when I compare myself to my other cousins who are all doctors and professors, I'm thinking to myself, where did I go wrong? You know, but yeah. So this is kind of interesting for me too. It took me a long time to develop this, and our school wasn't any better in Malaysia at that time. Even in science classes, it was like, well, you know, everything was still by memory. It was terrible. But I think this is the most this is the majority of our of the type of thinking that we want students to also develop through their other learning strategies as well. And the other one is the pupil research. And now, of course, we can research anything. We've got Wikipedia and Google. No, I know we're not supposed to use them, but anyway. So what is pupil research? Existing information, gathering new information, experimentation. And like takes time. So here's a couple of things. It can be time consuming. And of course, on the right-hand side of the table, they've got a suggestion of how to overcome it. But this may not be for everyone. Not everyone thinks or like research. And the last one, of course, is problem solving. I think problem solving is how would I say, is spread out through all the other different strategies as well. I think you've got to incorporate them. So although we've tried to departmentalize all these different teaching strategies, I think along the way, there is always going to be an overlap in all these teaching strategies that you come to bring to your students. It's not going to be one method. So going back to this person, Joe Rule, that I had, if you want to have a look, This is terrible. I'm working with an Apple computer at home, and I don't normally work with Apple computers. So here we go. Let me see if I can call this up. In my notes. All right, there is this link that I've got, and I'll bring it across. It's this guy. He's a teacher. He's in the TEDx, and he says, "Well, you know what? He was at a cafe, and he was looking at the students going through through the canteen, and they were picking out their foods. And he thought, you know what? What we need is a menu. Students should be able to go into class, and lots of activities happening, but they all try to achieve the same outcomes. And at the end of the day." And he's the person who set up all these different stations, if you like, for students to be, you can sit down, collaborate, you can actually look at the computer screen, answer questions, you can, how would I say, do little activities on the side, and you write down your results and everything else, and they all try to learn the same outcome. So, and at the end of the day, it is more about caring about the student. And yes, so the care is the most important, and he raised these things: choice, collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity. And he separated out all these activities and combined them all together. And yes, it took a lot of time to develop them in this classroom, and I think that's very challenging, especially as a teacher where you've got limited time to do it. So there you go. Those are the 4 strategies in teaching.
Do stop your sharing now, and then we can see more of us. Thank you, Andrew, very, very much. I felt you gave a very balanced view of all those, and I couldn't detect any preference for any one. But do you have one?
I think in a classroom situation, I think it would be critical thinking and guided discovery.
That's what you would lean towards, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I love the fellow with Joe Rule and his passion. And as you say, key thing you said, that's a huge amount of work. But giving kids choice rather than you do it this way, I think is a really key distinction. And you mentioned 4 strategies, teaching strategies, brilliant variety. But I would, yeah, I'm sure we could devise probably 44 teaching strategies, really. They were, if you like, I would call those a sample of key ones. But yeah, I feel as if, as teachers, let's be fishing, searching for particular strategies that fit what we're trying to teach, fit our students, and fit us. And we don't have to be locked in and be forever looking for new ones. And today, you know, I've heard of this idea of teaching stations around the room before. I hadn't got the name Joe Rule on my head, but I've heard of that before. But yes, but no. I would struggle. It would be painful. Oh.
Indeed.
Anyway, enough of me. Others, please comment, reflect. Good. Thank you, Andrew. And moving along there, do we have Emily? Yes, we do. No, we do? Yes.
Yeah.
Where are you, Emily? There you are, Emily. Take us away with Robert Gagne, please.
All right. So obviously,
And please be 5 at the max.
I'll try.
Try.
Yeah. All right. So I had a bit of a look at Robert Gagne, or however you want to say his last name. But as the slideshow says, he was an educational psychologist, and he pioneered like the science of instruction. And he developed a series of study that simplified and explained what he believed to be good instruction. And I guess like his theory, I guess, would appeal to people interested in like a systems approach to education. So he had he came up with basically 8 categories of learning, 9 steps of planning instruction, 9 events of instruction, and then an evaluation process of like how the instruction went and all that sort of stuff. So pretty much I'm going to go through them all because there's lots. I'm not going to try and spend a lot of time on each of them. But his 8 categories of learning were signal learning, the use of stimulus in order to create a response. Number 2, stimulus response learning, the use of rewards and punishments. Number 3, chaining, being able to connect multiple lessons previously learnt to one another. Number 4, verbal association, being able to associate something verbally with another thing. And those first 4 were like behavioral aspects of like ways of learning. And then the 5th one is discrimination learning, so being able to differentiate between similar things. Number 6 is concept learning, being able to respond to different ideas in a similar category. Number 7 is rule learning, being able to apply a concept to different situations. And number 8 is problem solving, being able to create a rule in order to solve a problem and then being able to apply that rule to a similar problem or other problems. And the last 4 are cognitive aspects of learning. And then his 9 steps of planning instruction. There's a lot of steps, so I'm just going to try and get through them all. 1, identify types of learning outcomes. So each outcome may have prerequisite knowledge or skills that must be identified. Number 2, identify internal conditions or processes of the learner that the learner must have to achieve the outcomes. Number 3, identify external conditions or instruction needed to achieve outcomes. Number 4, specify the learning context. Number 5, record the characteristics of the learners. Number 6, select the media for instruction. Number 7, plan to motivate the learners. Number 8, test the instruction with learners in the form of formative evaluation. And lastly, number 9, after the instruction has been used, some evaluation is used to judge the effectiveness of the instruction. And then this is on Dr. Jim's slideshow that he showed us briefly yesterday, the 9 events of instruction. So this is like talking about like when you go to teach a class. So the first thing that he's saying that you should do is make sure that you like gain the attention of the students and ensure that they're receiving what you're saying. Number 2, inform the learners of the objective. So what do you want them to learn? What are you expecting? Like, is the outcome of what you're going to teach them? Number 3, make sure that you're stimulating a recall of prior learning. So if it's like relevant to something that they've learned before, try and link that. Number 4, present the stimulus. So I guess like present how you're going to teach it, I guess. Number 5, provide learning guidance. Number 6, eliciting performance, so how like their response. Number 7, provide feedback, so how they're going. Number 8, assess performance, so again how they're going, but like assess that. Number 9, enhance retention and transfer. And then pretty much after that he just talks about how he evaluates his instruction and how the class went, which is important. I think like I like his theory, and I like the fact that he's thought about the different ways that children learn. But as I was saying before, like you can have a whole class of different sort of learners and the way they learn. So it's really hard to like focus on one type of learning and like exactly how you're going to instruct something when you have so many children that learn differently. So but that's pretty much all. Not very clear, but I tried.
Emily, thank you for getting through all that. What hits me is that there's so much order, and he's categorized so many steps. The way you've explained it, frankly, probably more than many. Is that something that appeals to you in your way of thinking in preparation for a class, or would you find that too restrictive? What do you think?
I was actually didn't have a lot of time to do this yesterday because I was actually preparing a devotion for my youth ministry, and I thought about like the way I prepare my devotion is very like systematic, but then I find that when I get to the youth ministry, like I'll have the whole ideas in my head, but I'll get to it, but the class, or not the class, but the youth, like the vibe or whatever might be different to what I planned. So it's hard. Like I like systems because it helps me remember like what I've got to get through and all that sort of stuff. But then like once you get to the class, anything can happen. So I guess as long as you got something planned, that's a good thing.
No, that's brilliant. Anyone else want to make a comment? Okay, all good. One of the things I would just emphasize is that Gagne links prior knowledge. And as trainee teachers going in there, I wonder how, naturally we will be aware of what's gone before. Arguably your first part of a lesson will be to engage your students in a conversation about what they already know, or what they've been doing, or how they are. And in that way, and as Emily says, you're getting the temperature of the group, and you're saying, okay, well, yeah, I can float this now. But unless you know that, you've no idea where to land. And so the teacher just launches in, stunned mullets, oh, what's this? Anyway, thank you very much, Emily.
All good.
And Eliza. Yes, go for it. And you are 5 or even 4 minutes on Barros Skinner.
Yeah. So obviously this is all about behaviorism. I largely just got everything from the lectures and things like that. So behaviorism is based on the idea that all our behavior is a reaction to external environmental things. So where but the common thought maybe is that where our thoughts, our will determines, okay, I'm going to act in this way. Behaviorism kind of flips that on its head and says, no, everything that you do is determined by things outside of yourself. So Skinner was obviously the guy who was like really key in this, and he broke environmental kind of things into 2 types of conditioning. So the operant conditioning, that's all about like consequences and associating a behavior with what happens after it, whether that's a positive thing or a negative thing. And the classical conditioning, which is just associating 2 things together, almost in like a cause and effect way. I watched an interview that was in one of our PowerPoints with Skinner after he'd done this experiment with like pigeons, and the interviewer asked him about like free will. Where does that leave your own mind and your own ability to determine your actions? And he basically out and out said free will is a fiction. It's not a thing. It's not real. It's just an idea that we have, because everything that we do is determined by our environment and things out of our control. So it leaves like the concept of mind on this very low level playing field, which I was kind of thinking when you apply that to teaching, it really affects the way that students see their work and the teachers see their students. So I in my schooling experienced times where the teacher would just be like, oh, if you finish this on time, we'll go outside and play for 10 minutes, or, and they kind of assume that what you're doing is something you're enduring because you hate it, and you ought to be rewarded for that, without even kind of giving you the opportunity to be like, oh no, I actually enjoy this, or I don't know, you don't even get to think that as a kid.
Yeah.
And told what you think about learning.
Yeah.
So it changes the way kids see their work, and it becomes the lens through which the teacher sees their students as kids who are not independent beings with their own will and their own ability to make decisions, but as byproducts of what's happened to them, or their home life, or their friends, or they are what they are, and that's kind of it. Which I think it's just a bit of a simplistic view of kids. I found it, well, as people, I found it interesting that Skinner does this experiment on pigeons eating seeds and then basically connects that to human behavior and says they're one and the same thing, without really acknowledging the complexities and the difference between a pigeon and a human being. Which, I don't know, maybe says a lot about where he's coming from. I also thought from a Christian perspective, which is where I would sort of be approaching my education, it's a really low view of kids and of human beings. It kind of brings them back to this very basic level evolutionary thing. Rather than, I think, as a Christian, I believe that, you know, we're creative beings and God's given us an ability to think for ourselves and create new ideas, and hopefully we see that in kids as well. But as I was researching it and talking it out with my family and stuff, there is also no denying that the concept of reinforcement does work and is something like it would be nice if intrinsic motivation was a thing all the time. But I think we can all relate to the human experience of just having to do things that we don't want to do. We don't wake up every Monday morning and we just want to go to work and we don't even have to be paid. Like, we just love it so much that we're right there. So I guess the question I was left with was, is there something to be taken from this? And can we kind of make, like, there's huge flaws in it, but is reinforcement something we could do in a healthier way?
Oh, very good. Thank you very much, Eliza. You have, for me, you've expressed that nicely. I am constantly concerned about the staff rooms you will all go into, and in the subconscious, if you like, of the school's community, what is actually the driving philosophy? And is it that the kids are enduring school to get out? Or is it actually something that we're passionate about and we want them to be passionate about? And so have your antenna up and do pick up what is the underlying philosophy of the school you're in and the people you're having to work with. And it is so important. And I think I'm not a philosopher, but I would say that this whole Skinner thing, the behaviorism, underpins secular philosophy and therefore schooling as we know it in the Western world. So we're a counterculture, pushing upstream, different flow. Anyway, as you say, there might be bits of Skinner's stuff that you can adopt, and you're right. Getting a habit of mind takes some discipline, takes some reinforcement. Enough of me. Anyone else want to comment, please? Okay. And finally, Chris in Queensland is going to take us on a journey with Vygotsky for a few minutes.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to my little friend. My little friend's name is Tatiana. I'm hoping you can see Tatiana on the screen here.
Yes.
Tatiana is a little kid who lives at home with grandma. And grandma, her babushka, just delights to hear that moment when Tatiana says, "I can do this myself, grandma." That's those amazing moments when grandma just smiles deep inside her. When Tatiana says, "Grandma, I can do this myself. I can feed myself. I can catch the ball." And then there's that moment that says, "I can tie my own shoes. I can do this myself." But you know what? This is what Tatiana can do. But there's a whole bunch of things that Tatiana, the child, is also going to need a more knowledgeable other, an MKO for. And when the MKO, the more knowledgeable other, turns up, the more knowledgeable other can teach Tatiana those things that they don't know, like gymnastics, or perhaps being able to do some mathematics. Tatiana really doesn't need mathematics at the moment because she's just a little kid and a lot of things aren't required there. But the more knowledgeable other, who could be a teacher, a coach, or a mentor, is able to help Tatiana in this space here that's called the, looking for it on my notes, it's the zone of proximal development. But you know what? It's not just about the more knowledgeable other. Tatiana has a friend who lives next door. Let's get that on the screen. Tatiana's friend, whose name is Dimitri, his dad plays and builds violins. So Dimitri is helping Tatiana to learn to play the violin. Now, Dimitri's younger, but his space helps him to understand, because of his environment and his zone of proximal development with his dad, he's able to help Tatiana learn the violin. And then the other kids from up the street all get together. Some of them are older, some of them are younger, but they get together and they all play in an orchestra together. Their favorite tunes are Stravinsky tunes because they're all from Russia. Basically, my story is that people learn from each other in the spaces between. This guy called Vygotsky, who, if you haven't figured out, is Russian, is a Soviet psychologist. His work was around how do different people learn things. And basically, we all have more knowledgeable others in our lives. They could be friends, they could be family, they could be teachers. And those people who coach us and are peer learners with us fill in some of those gaps that we don't know. But the big thing is that moment when perhaps you've experienced it, when a kid suddenly catches the ball and yes, they've got that ball in their own hands, and the kid looks at the ball and goes, wow, I've got it. And the person who is potentially the more knowledgeable other goes, yes, you did, you got it. Ladies and gentlemen, Vygotsky.
Thank you very much, Chris. I think you're a passionate supporter of Vygotsky by the sound of things. Oh dear. I must confess, Chris, surely if they were all Russians, you could have the bigger enveloping the other, and you'd end up with a, what's it called, a doll?
Yeah, the babushka dolls.
Yes, yeah.
What? You know what? Knowledge is not about encompassing and swallowing another person.
Fair enough.
Joy and success, not swallowing.
Fair enough. Yes, spreading and multiplying and conquering the world. Anyone else want to make a comment? How can you follow that? Oh dear. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. In our remaining moments, if I may, I'd love to shoot through a bunch of stuff, which is passionate for me. This is PowerPoint 3, page 3, classroom management. Now, that list there you can see of 1 to 11 are really, they're me. I've not copied them from anywhere else. But let me just underline number 1. Never be late for a class if you can possibly avoid it. There's something, you are so much on the back foot if you end up arriving late to a scrum outside your room. The vibe is already set, but if you can be there and greet the first, yes, then the culture can be yours as you go forward. But have a read of those points, please. Classroom management is such a biggie. Number 8, classroom management, some more notes here. Can I just underline that it isn't necessary, to me, it's not putting out the fire and controlling a chaos? What if you establish expectations and your whole belief is that you've forgotten about the ruckus of yesterday? You come with a clean slate, no history of wrongs, they're all gone, and that's nice and scriptural, and you basically expect the best, and frankly, if you do, you normally get it, whereas if you expect the worst, you probably will too. So on page 23, and then I'll shush for a bit of comment or question. 23, what makes a great teacher? Now on this list here, there's a bunch of links, and I really want to underline for you Sheila Joseph. Now have a watch of that video. She's a young lawyer, I think she was, in New York State, but she leaves that career and ends up setting up a school as a youngster in New York, in a disadvantaged location in New York. To me, it is such an inspiration that somebody can get such a passion that they can do arguably the impossible. And so for you people, nothing is impossible. Now, I'm not saying building a school is the pinnacle of experience. It may or may not be your calling, but certainly don't settle for the basic. Seek out what it is that you're in the journey for. Yes, to be a classroom teacher, but what may be down the track? So have a listen to Sheila. Now, Doug Lemov, can I see a show of thumbs or not? Does anybody know Doug Lemov? Wow. Okay, thank you. I didn't think you would. But Doug Lemov, the 100% teacher. Now, going back to Andrew's presentation on teaching strategies, he's done a huge amount of research across successful schooling and successful teachers. And my caricature, which won't be his, but mine, is that the most successful teacher has every kid on the end of their finger, and they don't breathe unless he knows it. It's absolutely electric and clockwork and regimented and repeat after me and teacher-centered, and yet never forgetting the individual. It's incredible energy, incredible energy. And he's done this whole, if you like, movement called 100% Teachers. And I commend it to you. I'm not saying you need to model it, but have an examination, have a reflection, an analysis of what it is that is so successful in his successful teachers. And allied to that is this video here, John King, on Uncommon Schools. I think Doug Lemov's movement is called also the Uncommon Schools. So these two are definitely symbiotic in terms of what they're on about. And just imagine, my picture for you is this: a united school community, absolutely passionate, supporting every single one, not letting anybody left behind, versus the amorphous, everybody's in it for themselves, and he who or she can rise to the top wins, and it doesn't matter about those who are left behind. I mean, I see many schools like that, where, well, they don't have the capacity. That's okay. Let's find a job for them. Anyway, page 24. Now, on page 24, I confess that the last link doesn't work, and I haven't had an opportunity to fix it. But can you just Google "what if learning" .co.uk, I think it is. Yeah, whatiflearning.co.uk. It's a Christian wonderful website, and when you're writing units of work and lesson plans and the like, you will get incredible inspiration from here. Anyone seen What If Learning before? Okay, it really is stunning, and I've found so many people around the world who go there and gain a lot of encouragement. Now, the last one, on number 3, I share with you a photo of sunrise, and this is a bit of interaction, and I want to get on to number 4 as well today, but that won't take us long. So if you have a look at this photo of sunrise over the River Rhine in Germany, my question is to you, and please unmute your mic when you respond, which direction is the river flowing, right to left or left to right? Andrew, you're unmuted. You're going to give me an answer.
Oh, sorry. I was actually responding to another chat. Can I have the question again, please?
Yeah. Looking at this picture of the River Rhine,
Yes.
which direction is it flowing? Left to right or right to left?
I can't tell. Well, if I hazard a guess, I'd be standing on this side of it's right to left, left to right. Sorry, for sure.
Why are you saying that, Andrew?
I'm just guessing. I can't tell. I've got no context.
Yes, you do.
Have I?
Yes, you do. Chris?
It could be change of tide.
It's noon
If it's change of
or
tide,
evening.
not going either
Oh,
direction.
no. Well, I can, yeah, fair comment, Chris. I can tell you this picture was far too far from the sea to be tidal.
Oh, okay.
Another minute. Anyone? It's flowing from right to left. And
how
why
can you
is
tell?
that? Why do you know that? I mean, I happen to stand there and take the picture. Because where does the sun rise? In the east. Which way does the River Rhine flow? South to north. Therefore, that we must be looking east. Therefore, the river is flowing from right to left. Chris?
That clearly requires the knowledgeable other to give us.
Well, I was testing your geographical knowledge of the River Rhine.
Never been there, don't know.
I only studied Germany back in grade 6.
Okay.
Can't remember a thing.
Okay. Well, now today you have learned the River Rhine flows south to north. Oh dear. So, any questions, comments so far, or otherwise I'm going to just shoot into PowerPoint 4. Okay. I will attempt to. What have I done? Yay. Here we go. Coming into land, folks. Share screen. Okay. Now that's the last slide in PowerPoint 4, number 15. And I just thought I'd introduce you to my wife. She's called Jill with a G. And that picture was taken in Central Park, New York in 2010 on a very cold December morning. And we were on our way to see our son, who happened to be in England at the time. Now, page 3, can I commend to you Richard Edlin? He's a New Zealander, but anything you can find on Richard Edlin on Christian education is excellent. He comes from the parent-controlled stable of schools, and a lovely, lovely thinking man about the mission of Christian education. Number 4, Trevor Cooling, He's English, very English, and he basically runs this institute in Canterbury, Southern England, and also is the author of What If Learning. Absolutely passionate about the cause of Christian education. So anything written by him, I would highly commend to you. Now, page 5. I can't let this week go by without mentioning a teacher's professional liability. The law is increasingly affecting the practice of education. The most likely reason the teacher or school will face legal action is in negligence, where a student has been injured while under school's protection. So let me just give you a little scenario. When you go into schools, be aware that you can't just focus on the one who happens to be needing your attention at the time. And typically that might mean you turn your back on the rest of the class. Somehow or other, you've got to be positioned so that you can see and sense what's happening across the whole class, even though you're giving devotion and attention to the one. Because you've got to just build that rationale of having eyes in the back of your head and having sensory perception everywhere, so that you can honestly never be accused of negligence, which is really, really sad. That if something were to happen in a school and you blinked, it's not really an excuse in law, apparently. And to satisfy the elements of the tort of negligence, the student who becomes in law the plaintiff must prove that a duty of care was owed. And yes, you do. You owe a duty of care. The duty was breached by not maintaining the appropriate standard, and the injury was a reasonably foreseeable consequence of the breach of duty. So, and then there's a bunch of other slides about your teacher's responsibility, which I urge you to read and take on board. Page 9, Etienne Wenger. How many eyes, how many thumbs know Etienne Wenger? Whoa! Now, Etienne Wenger is a Swiss man, brought up in the French part of Switzerland. And he's actually the same age as me, born in 1952. And he's done this whole thing about communities of practice with his wife, Jean Larve. They've got this whole thing about communities of practice. I love it. It's absolutely energizing. It's safety. It's mutual support. It's a fantastic notion, not necessarily just for education, although he does apply it to education a lot. So anything about Etienne Wenger, I commend to you. And in particular, I was thrilled last year to do a video with him. So if you go into Google and say Etienne Wenger Gym 12s, you'll get a 2019 video, 20 minutes. Him and me, we have a chat about communities of practice. I don't think the link is on Moodle yet. And the last thing I wanted to mention to you, and I'll stop sharing, there's Etienne, a bit younger than he is now. The last thing I want to mention to you is the clinical teaching model. Do I see any thumbs you know about the clinical teaching model? Heard of it? Anyone heard of it? Yes, I see a nod, a couple of thumbs. Well, the clinical teaching model, we've been running here for AC for probably 5 years now, 4 years. And basically, the idea is that you might be doing a 1 day a week volunteering in a school. And you might think, why would I do that when I've got study to do? But the point is, there would be an opportunity for you to practice what you're learning, and you'd be having a mentor or mentors around you that weren't there to assess you and judge you, but actually to build you up. And here's the kicker. You would have the opportunity of creating lesson plans, units of work for your host school, and therefore doing them a favor, but submitting those pieces of work to AC for your assignments. And there might be a bit of modification to be done. So you have a word with your lecturer, hey, instead of doing year 7, can I do year 10? Okay. And then it can be negotiated. So it could be a lovely symbiotic relationship for you. So please Google up clinical teaching model, Alpha Crucis, and do all you can reading about that. That might be for you. And the last thing I want to mention is, and I'll open to your questions, is hubs. We started with our first hub at Alpha Crucis in Hunter, New South Wales. And there's about 5 different schools, all in one consortium. The St. Philip's group of schools, Newcastle, Cessnock, Gosford, a few other locations, and they've all come together and created the St. Philip's Teaching School. Now, in that hub, the school has interviewed prospective students, and they are now being paid as TAs to work 3 days a week in one of their schools, but they're also studying with us at bachelor or master's level. So it's like, I've often said, it's like a clinical teaching model on steroids. We've now, this year, we've started a hub in Sydney, the Teaching School Alliance Sydney. And there's about 5 different schools in the Sydney area, and we've got students attached to each of those. We're looking to start another one in a state to the south of Victoria. You might know it. They grow apples. We're looking into one down there. But the options are endless. So if you happen to be in a community connected to a school, that's something you might like to talk to me about, or David Hasty, who's the Associate Dean, and he's the particular man on the ground for hubs. Enough could be done in Queensland, but we don't let alone in. I'm sorry. Please have a word with your Premier. I'm sure we're not all going to be infectious. Just 1 or 2. Anyway, any questions, please? Otherwise, we'll meet again in a few weeks prior to the minor. And don't forget to use that the class forum for questions. And yesterday, Carissa sent me an email, and I wrote back to her, said, yeah, these questions need to be on the forum. So I popped them on the forum and answered them there. So just think, is this going to benefit others, or is it just about me and I need to take my dog to the vet? In which case, don't put that on the forum, please.
When I was doing,
Emily, go.
When I was doing research for Rob Gagner or whatever,
yeah,
I went to look for his book called The Conditions of Learning on EBSCOhost, but when I found it, like I wasn't able to like read the book itself. It just sort of gave me a blurb about like what it's about, and then I couldn't read it. Like, is there a like EBSCO, because I used EBSCOhost last year, and I feel like there's a lot of things I couldn't have access to, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like
look, Emily, you raise a great point. Can you please, for this purpose, use the Moodle Messenger or the link to the library? And the library staff are brilliant and will love your feedback and get back to you. And if you find an outcome on that's beneficial to all, then put the link or something on the class forum.
Yeah. Because I
So-
definitely just ended up using websites because I was like, I can't
Yeah.
find stuff that I want to
Yeah, I
find.
know. And also you can actually have books from here, Sydney, posted to you if you request them. That I know they do that. But the best thing is peer-reviewed journals.
Okay.
I mean, Gagne is a bit long in the tooth, as in historically. He's dead, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, he's dead. So
Mhm.
basically, there may not be a book by him in our system. But
Okay.
then I think, frankly, Emily, you took out of him the main core, namely he's incredibly thorough with
Yeah.
planning.
Yeah, he is.
Absolutely incredibly thorough. And to me, that's his claim to fame. And some of us may need to take that.
Yeah.
We may be scatty people, and we would really value having a structure and a rationale for why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. I guess like I found EBSCO host really hard just to find good references, I guess, last year, and I used so many websites. It was bad, but I really
Yeah.
wanted.
Well, persevere, and maybe again ask for tips and tricks in terms of how best to search.
Okay. Yeah.
And then refine your search. You know about the refining of the search down the left? Geography, dates, whether it's full text or not, and all that.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Anyone
you.
else? Patricia.
Dr. Jim,
Yeah.
what's your email address, please?
On the
Alpha
Moodle
Cruz-
page, on the welcome paragraph at the top, you've got
Yeah.
my name,
Yeah.
and it's in blue. So you click on it.
Okay, I just couldn't find it, that's all. Yeah.
You just click on my name, and then it will send me an email.
Okay.
So find the
Awesome.
welcome under the title on Moodle, and then it's
Yep.
a paragraph from me. Let me find it. Jim, you can do this. No, I can't. Sorry,
Yeah.
but it's under there on the EDU101 and the 401.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay, it's bye for now, I think.
See ya.
Bye all.
Thank you very much, presenters. You did an awesome job.
Thank you.
Yes, I did.
They really did. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Yeah.